An update now to a story that we've been following because we do not think that it is a coincidence that a once rare condition that's existed for decades is suddenly affecting so many people. Something called alpha-gal syndrome, transmitted through tick bites, which causes an allergy to red meat. It can also be deadly. And over the last 5 years, cases of alpha-gal have increased by over 300%, 10,000% since 2013. After Bill Gates invested millions of dollars in genetically engineered ticks, that's a fact. He's also an investor in lab-grown meat companies.
Professors from Western Michigan University, they lay out that they say it's morally required to intentionally genetically engineer Lone Star ticks to spread alpha-gal syndrome as a form of moral bioenhancement to stop people from eating meat.
Think about this, a tick-borne illness that's been around a long time. It stops people from eating red meat. They are allergic to it. You can have reactions to it because climate fanatics think it's better for the climate if we eat less meat. Then you factor in Bill Gates, unlimited money, climate hysteria, and lab-grown meat being sold in more and more places. Interesting questions. Dr. Scott Commins is the Vice Chief for Allergy and Immunology at UNC School of Medicine, and alpha-gal syndrome has been the primary focus of his research. And Ashley McCarty is a Missouri cattle farmer who's been living with alpha-gal since 1993. It's great to have you both here. Ashley, can you just take us through what happened to you and what daily life is like now as a cattle rancher living with alpha-gal syndrome?
Absolutely. Alpha-gal syndrome is very personal to me. I have been living with it since 1993 when I was still a teenager, and it absolutely affects every aspect of daily life beyond just red meat. It is mammal byproducts and affects so many ingredients in everyday products. And so it has changed the way we as cattle producers eat as a family diet. I know I'm not alone in that there's many families that see the same thing. And so it has certainly changed our diet and our way of life to some degree.
Fair to say that it was pretty rare in 1993?
Yes, it wasn't named. I didn't have a diagnosis for decades. It wasn't known. I just, by trial and error, was fortunate to be able to figure out symptoms, syndrome, and what to avoid.
Okay. Dr. Commins, you are one of the foremost experts on alpha-gal. Do you think it's odd that cases are more common now than they were years ago?
No, I don't think it's odd. I think it tracks with the expansion of Lone Star ticks in the U.S. and other ticks globally.
To what do you attribute that?
Well, there's an expanding range of Lone Star ticks based on surveillance. And when you look more globally, there's an increase in tick populations in places where alpha-gal syndrome exists, in Scandinavia, Europe, Australia, and now even in Asia.
Do you think it's suspicious here, Doctor? And again, I don't want to put you in a political position, but we've seen in the last 5 years a 300% increase in cases. In the last decade, according to one study, 10,000% increase since 2013. The study attributes that to a growing white-tailed deer population. Look, I'm a skeptic, but I just don't know if I buy that. What do you make of that?
Well, no, we know that white-tailed deer clearly for Lone Star ticks are the major vector for moving them around, and there's been an expansion in the geographic range of white-tailed deer and an explosion in the number of white-tailed deer. So in my mind, it tracks with the movement of deer and their increasing numbers.
Okay, Ashley, have you seen an uptick in your area in Missouri?
Absolutely. It is. I was just in a coffee shop this morning and heard a family talking about how they had to adjust their diet, that they had a daughter with an alpha-gal diet and other complexities. And so while I used to be the person that people knew with alpha-gal or red meat allergy, at that time, it has certainly become common in Missouri households, unfortunately. And for farmers and ranchers, we're outside inevitably, and ticks are unavoidable.
Okay, I want to play you a soundbite, Doctor. This is something the United Nations said just recently. Take a look.
In 2050, 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions will be from meat and dairy alone. If we are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from food and farming systems, we really have to reduce meat and dairy production and consumption.
Okay, and the political left does want to blame the increase in alpha-gal and tick populations and Lyme disease, by the way. We're seeing that increase as well, and Pfizer now has a new Lyme disease vaccine. They want to blame it on climate change, but I want to, you can't avoid the other part of this, which is, you know, ticks are being modified, and now more and more of these cases are happening, and they're trying to get people to stop eating red meat. Somebody from the United Nations just said it right there. Do you think, at the very least, there could be a connection?
Well, what we've seen is that there are rising cases of alpha-gal syndrome, but we know going back historically and looking at banked serum from service members that this existed in the early 80s. So we've seen a rise, probably a proportional rise in alpha-gal cases with the expanding deer population.
10,000%? Does that seem proportional to you in a decade? I'm just asking medically speaking. That seems like a lot to me.
Well, keep in mind, there's a lot of surveillance that's happening now. We have a test now. We didn't have a test back then.
I buy that,
So
increased testing, yep.
It's a real challenge to understand where the rise is coming from, except to say we've had documented alpha-gal allergic cases for many years at this point. And I'm pushing 45 years.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Scott Commins, appreciate you being here. Ashley McCarty, thanks for sharing your story. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.